Hi guys, today we are going to study about the embryology of the nervous system and the various malformations which come along with it. For example, anencephaly, spina bifida, Arnold Chiari, Dandy Walker, holoprosencephaly. So let's not panic and let's get started. So CNS, everybody knows what CNS is. It's central nervous system, which comprises of two very important structures known as the brain and the spinal cord. This brain and spinal cord together are derived from a structure known as the neural tube. But what comes the neural? How does this neural tube is formed, and what is responsible for formation of this neural tube? Let's get into it. So, we are well aware of this term known as the notochord. This notochord is a mesodermal structure which ultimately is responsible for the formation of the neural tube, because notochord itself in the embryo is an organizer. It's a secondary organizer and is responsible for the formation of neural tube. It is also known as a master inducer because it releases some signal. But what kind of signal? Let me tell you. It releases a sonic hedgehog signal which actually stimulates the ectoderm above the notochord to form nervous system. Let's see by the diagram. As we can see that our human body is formed by three germ layers known as the ectoderm, mesoderm and the endoderm. The ectoderm above the notochord is responsible. The ectoderm above the notochord gives rise to your neuroectoderm. Right, the rest of the ectoderm gets converted into the skin, but just the ectoderm above the notochord gets converted into neuroectoderm. The notochord converts it into a neural groove first. This neural groove then elongates and deepens to form this neural groove further, and there are additional sets of cells which arises in the sideways known as the neural crest. Neural crest funnily is also known as the fourth germ layer and is responsible for giving rise to so many tissues in our body, and these are all spread in the different parts of the body all throughout. Right, for example, parafollicular C cells of thyroid, and the most important one is the parafollicular C cells, right? So now we see that when this neural groove deepens, it then ultimately it gets itself enclosed and forms this neural tube. As this word suggests, neural tube. Neural tube is hollow from the inside, and this structure which is open is known as the neural canal inside. This neural canal is the structure where the future CSF is going to follow. Future CSF is going to flow, right? And this neural canal ultimately is give rise to the whole CSF drainage system, which comprises of these ventricles and this aqueduct and the central canal of the spinal cord, right? We'll get everything into detail, so let's not panic. So this is how this neural tube is formed. This neural tube is not formed simultaneously from the rostral end to the caudal end. It happens within a span of few days, right? It starts when around on day 18 and it's get completed totally on day 25 when the rostral and the cranial neuropore closes, and on day 27 when the caudal end of the neuropore closes. By the rostral word, we always mean the future mouth opening position of the cranial end. So let's not get confused whenever this rostral comes in the embryology part. On day 25, if there is a problem in the closure of the rostral neuropore, it gives rise to this grave anomaly known as the anencephaly, right? And if there is problem in the development of the caudal neuropore, it gives rise to the condition which we are well aware of as the spina bifida. I am going to discuss all these topics in the later part of my video in great detail. So now we are going to study that how this neural tube is ultimately going to form this complex human brain. So let's dig into it. Right, neural tube, as we know, in the cranial end of the tube, it basically enlarges to give rise to three primary brain vesicles. These three primary brain vesicles are ultimately responsible for formation of the brain. These three primary brain vesicles are as follows. The first primary brain vesicle is the prosencephalon, which gives rise to forebrain, and the second primary brain vesicle is the mesencephalon, which will give rise to midbrain, and the third primary brain vesicle is the rhombencephalon, which will give rise to hindbrain. These three primary brain vesicles ultimately would convert into five secondary brain vesicles, and this prosencephalon will divide into telencephalon and diencephalon. Mesencephalon will itself continue into mesencephalon, and the rhombencephalon will divide itself into metencephalon and the myelencephalon. And the caudal end of the neural tube will ultimately form the spinal cord. So now let's look at how these five secondary brain vesicles will ultimately form the adult CNS organs, right? So this is how it happens. On the ultimate left column, I have written all the names of the five secondary brain vesicles, and the structures here are all the brain structures which will give rise to, and the neural canal remnant is the part of the neural canal in which So now we study that how these five secondary brain vesicles will actually give rise to different adult structures, right? So telencephalon give rise to cerebral hemisphere, the two cerebral hemisphere, and most of the basal ganglia. We all know what basal ganglia is. Basal ganglia is basically collection of the gray matter located deep inside the cerebral hemisphere. For example, the caudate, putamen, globus pallidus, etc. The neural canal remnant associated with telencephalon is lateral ventricle. There are two lateral ventricles, each corresponding to one cerebral hemisphere, and each lateral ventricle has different horns in the different lobes of the brain. For example, there is a frontal horn for the frontal lobe, the occipital horn for the occipital lobe, and the temporal horn for the temporal lobe. And there is a main body. Now we come to diencephalon. Diencephalon gave rise to thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, and subthalamus. So basically, any structure with the word thalamus in it is derived from diencephalon. And the interesting point to note here is even the retina and the optic nerve is developed from your diencephalon, right? This is a very interesting part. You must have all noticed that third ventricle's lateral boundary is formed by thalamus. Now we all know why, because ultimately they all share an embryological origin, right? So we come to mesencephalon. Mesencephalon gives rise to your midbrain, and the neural canal remnant associated is a cerebral aqueduct. Cerebral aqueduct has a very much important clinical application in pediatrics because cerebral aqueduct stenosis is the most common cause of congenital hydrocephalus. But what actually is hydrocephalus? Hydrocephalus is the increase in the head circumference because of the accumulation of the CSF upward in the pathway. But why does it happen? It happens when there is a cerebral aqueductal stenosis. Because of the stenosis, the caliber of this duct is very much reduced and there is an accumulation of the CSF above it. For example, in the two lateral ventricle and the third ventricle. So this is a very important point for the NEET PG aspect also. Now we come to metencephalon. Metencephalon gave rise to pons and cerebellum, and the ventricle associated is the fourth ventricle. We all must recall from the neuroanatomy that there is a brain that fourth ventricle, anterior to fourth ventricle is pons, whereas posterior to fourth ventricle is cerebellum. Now we all know that these three share an embryological origin, and it's easy to remember this way. Myelencephalon gave rise to medulla and spinal cord, and the neural canal remnant they have is central canal. These neural canal remnant ultimately is going to be very important because they all are forming the CSF drainage pathway. If there is any block in this pathway, it will automatically cause the accumulation of CSF and it will increase the intracranial pressure, and in case of children it will give rise to hydrocephalus. Now we come into these important anomalies which occur when there is problem in the development of nervous system. Now we'll see what actually is anencephaly. Anencephaly, as I already discussed, is because of the failure of the anterior neuropore to close. Because there is a failure of the anterior neuropore to close, that is in the cranial and the rostral line, due to which the brain entirely doesn't develop, and this causes there is an absent brain. As you can see already that in this child there is no head, there is no brain. He has eyes and that's it. That's the baby's head end, right? So this condition can also be diagnosed in the USG, in the ultrasonography antenatally when this is a fetus. Right? This can be seen as when there is an absent head, the eyeballs are protruding like this, right? Like this structure. Eyeballs are protruding like this, giving rise to a sign as a frog sign. And if on USG the frog sign is seen, it as an indication of an MTP. Because ultimately this anomaly is majorly incompatible with life, so there is no point in carrying out the delivery and the whole labor when ultimately this baby cannot survive, right? And a very important point about anencephaly is that in anencephaly there is problem in the skin. There is a breaching of the skin. The body wall is not developed completely, due to which there is an increase in the AFP. AFP itself is a glycoprotein which is produced by liver. If it is detected in the amniotic cavity of the fetus, it actually means that there is a problem in the body wall breaching. This increase in AFP is not specific for anencephaly or CNS anomaly, but is rather non-specific for anomalies. It basically just means that the body wall is breached somewhere. So it can also be seen in some GIT anomalies known as the omphalocele and the gastroschisis, where the bowel is kept outside, where bowel is outside the body. Here also the body wall is not complete and hence AFP can be seen. So basically my point of telling it here is AFP is not specific for CNS anomalies, and increasingly, and the more specific part here is that there's an increase in acetylcholine esterase, because acetylcholine esterase means that there is an exposed neurotic tissue in the body. Increased acetylcholine esterase basically signifies an anomaly in which neurotic tissue is exposed, but it does not mean that it will be increased in every CNS anomaly. It is increased only in some cases of CNS anomaly. For example, anencephaly. And now we'll study about the different varieties of spina bifida. We all have heard this term of spina bifida and its different varieties. Now let's see in detail. So most important, most common and the most asymptomatic one is the occulta. Occulta, why? Because there's a failure to induce the bone growth around the spinal cord. The whole spinal cord, the bone is normal. Just the vertebral column, there's a problem in the opening, abnormal opening in the bone. The skin above the bifida, the above the defect is completely normal, and hence there is no increase in alpha fetoprotein, because alpha protein is increased only when there is a breach in the body wall. It is very much asymptomatic, and the only sign which we can actually by which we can come to know that there is a problem of spina bifida occulta is that there will be tuft of hair over the defect. There is an abnormal collection of the hair over the defect. As we can see in this picture, the skin is completely normal, there is no seeing abnormality which can see, but the only problem is that there is a tuft of hair above this defect, right? But what do you mean by this word occulta? Occulta means hidden, as this anomaly is. We cannot see this anomaly directly, and but we can only indicate that this anomaly exists. It's very much asymptomatic and is a very mild anomaly. The problem comes when there is a case of a meningocele, a myelomeningocele, and a myeloschisis. In the case of meningocele. Now we'll discuss about meningocele. In meningocele, there is a breach in the skin wall and hence there is an increase in alpha fetoprotein. What meningocele means is that the meninges protrude through the vertebral defect to form a meningeal sac. What does myelomeningocele mean? There is an increase in AFP, and there is a protrusion of meninges plus spinal cord through the vertebral defect. But in both these conditions, there is no increase in acetylcholine esterase because there is no neurotic tissue exposed to the outside. But in myeloschisis, the spinal cord can be seen completely exposed externally, and hence there is an increase in acetylcholine esterase as well as increase in AFP. So here is the summary. In occulta, there is no increase in AFP or in acetylcholine esterase, but in meningocele and myelomeningocele, there is increase only in AFP. Whereas in myeloschisis, there is increase in AFP as well as in acetylcholine esterase. This is how the spina bifida will look. This is the exposed spina bifida. Now we come to Arnold-Chiari malformation. What actually is Arnold-Chiari malformation? It's of two types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is most common and it is asymptomatic in childhood, and what happens in Arnold-Chiari type 1 malformation is there is a herniation of the cerebral tonsils through the foramen magnum. What happens is the cerebral tonsils here is herniated from the foramen magnum, causing the problems. Though it is asymptomatic in childhood, but in adulthood it is associated with syringomyelia and syrinx. What is syringomyelia and syrinx? Syringomyelia and syrinx, it is an abnormal cavitation which occurs because of the CSF accumulation in the spinal cord, and it is formed by the and is in continuation with the central canal. It can be seen here as it is in this is the spinal cord and here is the syrinx or the cavity. Right. This is what is Arnold-Chiari type 1 malformation. Now we come to type 2 malformation, as type 1 was more mild and asymptomatic, type 2 is more symptomatic. Why? Because there is downward displacement of cerebellar vermis as well as there is also downward displacement of brainstem and fourth ventricle. Here, as we can see, there is only downward displacement of cerebral tonsils in Chiari 1 malformation, whereas in Chiari 2 malformation, there is downward displacement of cerebellum, brainstem, and fourth ventricle. Because of important structures being herniated in Arnold-Chiari type 2, it causes the compression of the fourth ventricle, and compression of fourth ventricle ultimately causes the blockage of the CSF outflow, leading to increase in the CSF accumulation upward to it, causing hydrocephaly, and this is known as the obstructive hydrocephaly. And here it is very much symptomatic because in the child you can see the increased head diameter because of the hydrocephalus. It is also associated with the condition known as your lumbar myelomeningocele. Here we complete the both types of Allen-Chiari malformation. Now we come to another important malformation, that is the Dandy-Walker malformation. What exactly is Dandy-Walker malformation? It is nothing but that there is a failure of the foramina of the Luschka and Magendie to close. What are these foramens? These foramens are present in the fourth ventricle and are responsible for communication of the CSF from the ventricle system to the subarachnoid space, causing its complete circulation in our brain. But when there is failure of the formation of these foramen, it actually causes the dilatation of the fourth ventricle because of the accumulation. The fourth ventricle is so much dilated that it is also another cystic dilatation of the fourth ventricle, which can here be seen in this MRI. This whole dilatation and this whole fluid filled cavity is actually a fourth ventricle, which is so much filled that has almost compressed the cerebellum. This phenomena is your Dandy-Walker malformation. And now we come to your last anomaly of today, that is the holoprosencephaly. What is holoprosencephaly? It is the incomplete separation of the cerebral hemisphere. As we all know that in a human brain there are two cerebral hemispheres, and thus the MRI should look like having two cerebral hemispheres. But how is this looking here? Here we can see that we can only see a single cerebral hemisphere together with no septation in between, right? There is no septation in between. It is just a single hemisphere with a single ventral, and thus will have also a single one ventricle. It is very much seen in the Patau syndrome, which is also the trisomy 13. That is, what do you mean by trisomy? Is that they have a extra set of chromosome of 13th chromosome, like Down syndrome and Edwards syndrome. This holoprosencephaly is characteristically seen in Patau syndrome. In Patau syndrome, there is tendency of the midline structures to fuse, and hence even you can see this baby that even the eyes of this baby is fused and the nose is completely fused together. And the brain of this Patau syndrome child look like a one single complete hemisphere because there is an incomplete separation of the two cerebral hemisphere. Thank you. This was for much for today. If you have any query, post it down in the comments, and please tune in to my channel. And you know the drill. Please like, comment, share and subscribe for more important medical channel videos. And I hope you flourish, and I wish you